Welcome to writing study bar. Last class, we have seen this example like login application, and last class we have facing one problem. Image was not coming inside the form page. So I will resolve this problem in this video. Okay, in this video session, this is the form page. I have used this many like pasting. This is continuous. So I have used these many like stylistic CSS and this form and send to the login page, and also this form will work perfectly, but some my eclipse not open. Where is my eclipse? Okay, now it's opening. Wait. Today's topic is today's session is 11 to 12 session. Today is 12th session, guys. Today is our 12th session. Today is 12th session, guys. So now in this session, we will learn after the solving the image problem, we will learn what is that? We will learn annotation based application development, annotation based application. Spring 2.5 onwards, 2.5 onwards, Spring people introduce annotation concept. So when the annotation concept introduced, so reduce the XML code, but this is not totally 100% code driven application development. I will use XML as well as annotation. Why XML? To activate our annotation. So one tag is there, component scan tag is there. So that tag configured inside the web.xml file. That's why XML file is required. This approach is called this approach is called declarative approach with annotation. Declarative approach with annotation. This approach is called declarative approach with annotation. So we will learn all these things. First, I resolve the problem. We study this problem. Wait. Okay. In our application, image was not showing in the last page. So we are facing problem. I think directive structure was not giving properly. That's why. Okay, let's change the directive structure, then move to our actual discussion, like annotations. Step by step, this is not taking one session and jump to the another session and leave any topic. I will not leave any topic. I will not drop any topic. I will teach all these things. Okay. Use my thing, not required. Not so close, but I have to close this. Right click. Better to close the application so your Eclipse performance is better. Okay. Don't close the server folder. If you close the server folder, then your application will not exist. Inside the web icon folder, the images are there inside this. Inside this, images are there. I think given a proper path. I think so. Otherwise, change the directory. Let's see. What given this. Put the images folder inside the. So there is a login form. This form is there. Let's try this example. Right click, turn on. Server. this. Just focus then, just focus, just focus. Wait, wait. Also, what happened? Let's see. It should work, yeah. It should work. Huh? You just follow. Server will start still. Tom got server local and I want to start it. Oh my god, it's taking time. Huh? So better to increase the starting time. So open. Right click on the server and open. Inside the timeout. Inside the timeout. And here the 45 seconds. I want to put the 90 seconds. Good enough. Control apps. Just close this and again try to run. And my system is slow. That's why server starting taking time. Server start takes time. Time out. So that's why time outing problem is coming. So Spring we have discussed Spring annotation plus basic annotation. Annotation. Today's onwards. So started everything logging fields and Chrome. Still photo. Still photo. Now what happened? Where my folder? Just try this. Just copy the provide number. It's okay. Not an issue. Just loading page. And change this images. Not required this image. Let's see. First, go to the browser page. Why it's not coming? I don't know. All this good time, class, image, SRC. All these things are good. But copy this fine and put it in. Okay, I'll remove this. Now the images will save it. Right to my dot png. Just try. It won't reflect it. I don't know what is the reason. So let's see. One more time I want to start the server. This is the last time, then I will go to actual system. Login activities is performed perfectly. If you really think I am teaching us slowly, so just in a YouTube give a facility, just increase the speed. You can watch this video 2.8. And that nowadays it's very easy. You can learn anything. Okay. Now it's not coming. That's so we leave it. Leave it. Photo is not important. Login is important. Okay. Just for the like, interesting purpose I giving all this thing. So not it. Just leave it topic. In some other session I will do. So now today's session is annotation based Spring MVC. So Spring MVC and when the annotation start 2.5, Spring 2.5 onwards, Spring introduce annotation concepts. Okay. So when the introduce annotation, so remove the XML configuration, remove the XML code in the XML file like controller classes configuration and handle mapping configuration. Why? Because for the controller classes, they given an annotation called at the rate controller. And for the mapping classes, for the mapping class, they give in one annotation at the rate mapping, at the rate request mapping. So mainly they given 4 to 5 annotations. The 5 annotations, the mainly annotations, we are using the string MVC. The very frequently we use these annotation like controller, okay, the main and request mapping, word, request param, also binding the data in the request scopes, okay, and session attribute also. So one by one we will learn all these things. Okay. I want to tell you guys one thing. In Spring Boot MVC, these annotations are there. In Spring Boot MVC, why? Because Spring Boot MVC total remove XML file, total removed XML file. There is the only programmatic approach. Okay. Uh, there is not any like declarative approach like XML based configuration. Only programmatic approach like dynamic registration. 18. So now write it. So now topic is Spring MVC, Spring MVC with annotation, with application development, application development meant with annotations. Okay. So this is our today's topic, guys. Okay. So now point is Spring framework provide Spring framework introduced 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 annotation concept, annotation in Spring 2.5 version onwards. Because if we are using before this version like 2.4, the annotation supports are not there. If we are using 2.5 version, then annotation supports are there. So now by using annotation, we can remove by using annotation in a Spring MVC application, we are we are able to reduce the reduce the reduce the configurations in Spring reduce the configurations in Spring configuration file like what is that, like XML file. Okay. So now what is the reduce? So the mainly given the main the main the main annotations Again, annotation is given by spring 2.5 onwards is what is that? Is first annotation is at the rate controller, and second annotation is at the rate request mapping, and third is at the rate at the rate request param, and fourth one is at the rate station attribute. I will use this annotation in our example. Four annotation in the one example I will use. Okay. By using this annotation, we can remove these two annotation. We can reduce our XML code. What is the reduce? What is the reduce? So we can remove all controller. We can remove all controller classes configuration in XML file. Okay. And second thing is remove we can remove handler mapping class configuration. Handler mapping class configuration in XML file. So now, by when you are removing these files, then one tag is mandatory in the component is scan tag is there to mention this tag and remove this configuration. Okay, so now we will learn one by one. We will learn what is the controller, what is the isolate controller, and request mapping, request param, all these things we will learn. Okay, so now write it. Add the rate controller, add the rate first one, add the rate controller, add the rate controller annotations, add the rate controller annotation. These annotation, when they declare this annotation top of the class, then these annotation give the intimation to the controller. So not a controller, give the intimation to the Spring controller, Spring container. This class is the controller class. This class is controller class. Okay, so now write it. Now write it. Now write it. From like Spring 2.5 version onwards, 2.5 version onwards, we are able to declare all controller classes, all controller classes with and the next controller annotation. We are able to get okay. Annotation to tell tell the tell the spring container spring container that is class that this class is a controller class or handler class handler class handler class and handler classes to given an intimation to the spring container about the controllers, controller classes, controller or handler classes, and subclasses in their locations. On their locations, we have, and then we have to add one one tag in the spring, in the spring configuration file, file, the tag is nothing but the tag is not the tag. Context, the tag is context colon component scan, component hyphen scan, component scan based hyphen package. Here you can provide your package, like suppose controller package. Okay. Just suppose com dot itsp dot controller. That's it. Nothing else. Okay. So now here, these thing, only these things I don't see. Only these things tells to or tells the spring, container, tells the spring container to tells the con to auto scan the entire package to identify the component and controller components. So now context component scan in this inside this tag, this attribute tells to the spring container to scan automatically. It tells to the container to auto scan entire the package. Suppose controller inside the ITSP controller having multiple controllers, like 2 or 3 controllers are there, and then it search the at the rate controller annotation that controller and inject into the our spring configuration file. Okay. So now this is the total work. So if you want the example, so suppose this is the example. In the real-time example, suppose in this part, go here and copy the controller part where the Java resources, library, controller, login controller. Yes, okay. Open the login controller. Login controller. Login controller is there. This is the login controller, guys. So here, just copy this, Control C, and here, and paste it. Otherwise, not required. Control V. Yeah, these many things are not required. Just remove these methods or all the things are not required. Class is required. We have the class. Okay. Here is the some implementations are there. Some implementations. Okay. Methods like so in this top of the class, at the rate controller. When you declare this at the rate controller, so need not to be implement controller class, just remove this. Now this is the simple thing. Now this is the treated as the controller class. Treated as the controller class. Okay. This is all about controller. This is all about controller. Next annotation is our request mapping request mapping. Annotation request mapping. Second one is request mapping. Very important. Request mapping request mapping. Just change the color. Request mapping. This annotation define the request URL. This method define the request URL. Which request URL come from the form page. Then this will be accepted. So now request mapping annotation. This annotation is used for defining the URL, based on the context root and HTTP request based on the HTTP request method like get post. Okay, get post and etc. for get post. Okay. Now this is the important point. This annotation can use either by method label or class label. It is possible. This annotation is used to use as either class label, either class label annotation, either class label annotation, either class label annotation or method label annotation. Okay. Class label annotation or method label annotation. So now here syntax is there. Now syntax is what is it? At the rate request mapping, here you can pass value equals to suppose your pass the URL pattern. Here you can pass the URL slash the minute. You cannot skip the slash. If you skip the slash, it will not. Here you can pass the method. Like request method dot post of it, get or post. It's your choice. It's totally your choice. Okay. And now we are writing value equals to value is nothing but URL with class prefix. And here is method. Method is for what is the request method dot get class of post. This is the constant. This is the enum. Get and post is declared as the enum constant. Okay. So now how the declare Now, example, I will give you an example to you guys. Okay. So now example, let's example. At the rate, this is the support, this is the at the rate controller. This is our login page. Okay. This is our login controller, public class login controller, login controller, login controller. Inside the login controller, methods are the public model, public model, public model, and view object. Model and view for the login, login, login. Method is login. Method name is login. Okay. So here we pass about HTTP servlet, servlet request, request, RET request, HTTP servlet response. That's it. And it throws the exception. What it also throws the exception. It throws the exception. And here you can provide the implementation of return type. Return model like model and view object. Suppose here return new model and view model and view. That's it. That's it. Here we provide implementation. We provide related to logic. So now on this top of the top of this method, on the top of the method, pass the request mapping. Request mapping is value equals to slash login. This is the URL login. Okay. And method, this type method request method dot get post. This is the request mapping annotations, and this is the controller annotations. So now this class become a handler class. This is the handler class. Why? Because we say this is the handler, or because we have one handler method. This method. Yes, we can pass the handler method, the flexible nature. We can change the return type also. We can change the parameter. This is the optional. Not optional. We can change. We can flexible parameter. We can change the parameter. Like here, you can pass the different parameters and return type also. So now in future, I will tell you. Okay, all these things. Here you can pass as a string, void, model and view object, and many more things are there. And here you can pass and the request pair and model part, model map. Request is also there. So now write it. Guys. Possible parameter types, for a handler method for handler methods. So what is the first? First is same thing, like HTTP servlet request and HTTP servlet response. Okay. So Java dot X dot Java dot Java X dot circulate dot Java X dot circulate dot circulate dot HTTP or HTTP is also not into circulate circulate request request and response. That's it. Now next is this is the first parameter. Okay, this is the second parameter, right? And third parameter is at the rate request param at the rate request param to bind the data. Bind the data. Fourth one is the request header at the rate request header. Request header. Fifth one is cookie view value. Cookie at the rate cookie value. The flexible links, guys, to become flexible links. Okay. So the next is at the rate. Next sixth one is 9 number of parameters are there. At the rate model, at the rate attribute model attribute, at the rate model attribute, at the rate model attribute. Okay. Attribute. Now next is the binding result. Seventh one is binding result. Binding result. Eighth one is what is that? Station attributes. Station at the rate station attribute. That's request attribute. Last one is the ninth number of last one is the request at the rate request attribute. Request attribute. Now these 9 number of parameters we can pass inside the handler method. Inside the handler method parameter we can pass. So now one thing is reminding return type. What is that? The possible return the possible the possible return possible types of different types of handler methods. This is important. And I will start practical. There I will get all the clarity about this. What are the flexible images? Okay. But because it's the important. I will when I start developing application and start practical, I will show all combination related to the handler and related to the parameter. So now first parameter data type path string. String. Second you can pass view as the parameter. Third one is void you can pass. Fourth one is you can pass model and view. And fifth one is max. So these are the parameters we can. These are the return type we can pass inside the handler. So I hope you get the clarity This is the handler method. If we go take a confusion about this, I'm highlighting this. This one is not handler method. This one is the controller class. Okay. So now next next annotation is the request param. So next annotation is the request param. Next annotation is the request param. So write it. Next annotation is request param. And the third is the request param. Request param. Okay, so now this annotation will do. This annotation will do. This annotation will do bind the method parameter to the request parameter. Bind the method parameter to the request parameter. If you performing any suppose if you are performing login operation, login operation. You do not want to declare one separate variable inside the handler method, then you can declare, then you can use the request param inside the parameter, and you can directly get the value from the form page. This is the meaning of that. Like request param, the when request submitted by the browser, when request submitted by the browser, then request parameter are passed. The request parameter are passed through the URL pattern that can be easily mapped to the method by annotation, by annotating the method parameter to the request parameter. I will give the wave example that you will understand easily. When I will prepare application, there you will get more clarity. Okay. So now request parameter at this annotation. This annotation, this annotation, this annotation will be used in, sorry, not in, used in the method with the methods to bind method and bind the method parameter to the method parameter to the request parameter to the request parameters to the request parameter. Suppose request parameter. This is the simple. This is that's what I'm saying. Suppose in the form, you bind the form data inside the request inside the handler parameter, then use all the annotation and the request parameter. The request parameter annotation. Suppose if 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 the request is submitted, if the request submitted by the browser, submitted the browser or client, browser, the request parameter, request parameters are passed. Request parameter are passed through which through through the URL pattern, through the URL pattern. URL patterns to parameters. Parameters that can be that can be that can be easily mapped to the methods method by annotating by using annotating the method parameters with at the rate request parameter. So now this is the definition. This is the work do by the request parameter. Request parameter. So now here, observe this. This annotation will be used in methods. Used in where? In the method. This annotation used in where? Inside the method parameter. Inside the method parameter to bind the request parameter. To bind the request parameter with the method parameter. The parameter by using the request and easily to get. Okay. So now how the example? So example is same example I'm writing. Same example I'm writing. Copy this example. Oh, same example, same example. Only little bit changes are there inside. Okay, now log in. Okay, so this information. Now here, inside this pass, inside this here pass at the rate request param at the rate request param like suppose param from uname, suppose uname uname this type, the string type, declare the type. What is that? Uname, comma, at the rate request param, request param, like password. Yeah, we pass like password. Here we pass like password. Pass. Okay. Here we pass. Pass is also string like pass. Now close this method. Close this method parameter. Start the method body. That's it. This is the declaration. This is the declaration, guys. This is the highlighted point. This is okay. This is the request param. I hope you got clear, crystal clear clarity. Okay. This is the request param, guys. This is the request param. This param, this is the use in the form. In the form, we use the name. Same name we use here. Then bind the data and binding data is stored inside the store inside the store inside the uname. And same here, you pass, bind the you pass and save inside the pass variable and checking the further process and checking all these things. This is the local variable and local variable up to that method. So we can use this variable up to that method and check the login process user is right or not. Okay. So this is the at the rate request param. Next, fourth hour is be given or not. At the rate request param, be given. I have already given this annotation. We use inside the parameter, and these annotation also we use inside the parameter. But when I develop a string MVC application, then I will teach you all this point, like all permutation combination about the related handler methods and handle method signature. Okay. And next is at least 1 hour. 1 hour takes handler method signature flexibility. And after that, request param, get, post, and all these things are there. I will teach. I will teach. Okay. So now next annotation is session attribute. This is the easy annotation. Okay. This is the total entire application we can. If you declare this annotation on top of the class, then you can use this annotation data entire the application anywhere you can access. Okay. This is attribute attributes. So beautiful annotation. Beautiful, really, really good. Great annotation. My pointer. So now write it. Write it. This annotation used. This annotation. This annotation is used to 1 minute. This annotation is used to define a variable. Used to define a variable. Used to define what is that variable? Used to define a variable name. Variable name, and that variable you can up to that application. In order, in order to keep its key value, in order to keep key value, key value pair, in order to keep key value pair in session scope, and in order to in order to keep in order to use in order to use that in multiple pages. We can use in multiple pages. We declare one time as we can use multiple pages. I will show you. Same wave application, but same wave application. You can use this annotation in the entire. Okay. So now what is that? What is that? What is that? Syntax. Write it. Write it. Syntax is at the rate session attribute. At the rate session attribute here pass the parameter or variable parameter. That's it. So the next is example. Same example I'm giving. Huh? Okay. Copy this. Copy this example. Control C. And paste here. This. Not only what other thing is required is okay. So now here just declare this annotation top of the class. This annotation will top of the class. Here declare at the rate session attribute suppose status or result. Yeah. result result then this result you can use multiple pages. You can use the result and return the success now. Return the success and model and attribute propose. Here you can declare one more thing, so we get clarity. Suppose declare one method, login check method. Here, declare one more parameters. Good. Get declare one more parameter, comma, model map. Yeah, model map. Model map name. Then using this model map, map dot add attribute result, comma, suppose result, comma, login success, login success. Okay, login success, login success. That's it. So the login success. This is the result. This is the result. And this result goes to use entire the pages. Suppose some result page are there, okay, and then inside the result page, then use this attribute. How you use this attribute, I'm going to show. Okay, suppose this is our JSP page. Suppose result.jsp. This is our JSP page. Result.jsp page. Inside the we use one tag, percent string status. What is the status count? Session. This is the predefined object inside the JSP. Get attribute is the method. Get attribute is the method. Where result attribute. That's it. Now close this. Now here just or provide a semicolon. Then I want to print. I want here by using this annotation we can declare the Java code. Java code inside the JSP. How does the predefined object inside the JSP? 9 predefined object are so simple. Print the status. Which status come? Which status come? Which status come from? Which status come from? Which status come from? Oh, okay. Now this is the page. So now output will come. Okay. Output will come. Then status will print. Status will print inside the console, not a console inside the browser. Inside the browser window, output will come. This is the GSP page, guys. This is our GSP page. So we can use this result attribute. We can use this result attribute in the multiple pages. Multiple pages. Any number of pages we can use this page by using this get attribute method. Okay, I will show you this example in the next session. So thank you for watching. I hope you got clear crystal clarity about this topic. This is about the now. This is about the controller, guys. This is about the controller. Okay, about the controller, I hope you got the clear crystal clarity. And when I develop the example, when tomorrow and the next session onwards, I will develop examples. For example, by using these 4 annotations. Okay. By using these 4 annotations, so we will get clarity. And also I will show you the method flexibility, handle method flexibility in tomorrow onwards. So thank you for watching. We will meet in next session. So thank you. Next time.